I have not watched professional wrestling on a weekly basis in a long time. I stopped watching Raw about 4 months ago because it's become dog shit. Stopped watching SmackDown and NXT about 2 months ago. I tried to give them a little bit longer, but they have about like the same issues that Raw does now. And I would still watch Dynamite Live, but up at my campus, my townhouse, I don't have a cable box. I just got my Xbox and my streaming devices like Peacock and Hulu and all that stuff. Now, with all that being said, I thought I'd still want to watch weekly wrestling, so I thought I'd try something different a little bit, and I thought I'd review two wrestling shows that couldn't possibly be any more different from each other, for one, and possibly from what's going on today. We've got WCW Jim Crockett Promotions and ECW Hardcore Television. The ECW Hardcore Television one, which I'll be doing second, it is its first episode. I tried to find the first episode of Jim Crockett Promotions, but the best I could do was find the first episode that was up on Peacock, which was November 2nd of 1995. I actually don't think it was November, because they're talking about something a little on the show, so I think I got the date wrong, but that's what I wrote down. So, the show opens with clips, probably of a house show of Jimmy Valiant, the Boogie Woogie Man, winning a match. Right after he wins, he's jumped by the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette. They start to beat up Jimmy when a woman runs into the ring, and that's where the screen freezes. But before the screen freezes, you just hear a wave of white noise coming from the crowd there. The crowd reaction is insane. It sounds like it's about to break the whatever recording audio they had back at the time for poor Jim Crockett Promotions. We then go to the actual show where David Crockett and Tony Schiavone run down tonight's card. They show clips of a Tully Blanchard Magnum TA match. It was billed as the last match between them. Magnum's final shot at the U.S. title. In the match, both men couldn't stand back up, so it was ruled a draw. Magnum TA said that he wants an I Quit match inside of a steel cage with Tully Blanchard as a result of the inconclusive finish. The first match of the night saw the Raging Bull Mandy Fernandez take on Tommy Lane. Tommy Lane hits two arm drags on Manny, and they immediately run to a crisscross spot. The two times Tommy hit an arm drag, he wouldn't take over. He would just stand back up, and Manny would look at him. So they go into a crisscross spot, and Manny Fernandez hits a hip toss. Lane throws Manny into the ropes. He hits a drop down. He gets back up, and Manny hits a flying burrito for the win. The home match felt like it lasted around a minute. Good win by Mandy, I guess. They immediately went to a commercial break, and the little crawler on the bottom of the screen said, "Don't touch that dial. You haven't seen anything yet." And honestly, after that first match, I felt like I haven't seen anything yet. But if I'm being honest, match quality is not really what I was watching for these NWA shows. At least for most of the matches. I know most of them are just squash matches, but I felt like I always was interested in the promos. Which brings us to back from commercial. We go to an interview with David Crockett and NWA World Champion Ric Flair. David Crockett says you can respect Rick as a champion, as an athlete, but you can't respect him as a man for what he did to Dusty. Flair says he's been defending the title all over the world, and despite rumor, Dusty will be back on November 3rd, which is why I think I got the date right, because I wrote the show's November 2nd, so that would be tomorrow. Pretty sure I got the date wrong, but I'll add it in the title. I'll actually put the right date, or I'll just correct it next week. He said, despite the rumor of Dusty Rhodes being back on November 3rd, that isn't possible, not even for a man of Dusty's athleticism. He said, if Dusty is there, though, even though it's not possible, Flair will also be there, laughing and gloating and partying and driving the women wild like only the Nature Boy can. Woo! Very good promo by Rick, as you would expect from a Ric Flair promo, especially back when they weren't scripted. I actually don't know if Vince ever scripted Rick's promos, but a good promo by Rick, but not the best promo that will happen on tonight's show. We have Tony Schiavone back at the podium, the studio, interviewing the Andersons, Ole and Arn. Arn says Dusty is high on guts, but he's short on brains, and if he shows up on November 3rd, the Andersons and Ric Flair and Tully Blanchard, they'll re-break his leg. Ole said Dusty doesn't have any belts, and he doesn't have any guts. Nope, my bad. I fucked that up. He said Dusty has a lot of guts, but he doesn't have any guts. Fucking fuck. He doesn't have any brain cells, or he doesn't have any title belts. Like, I don't have any brain cells after that sentence. We move on to the second match on the show. Second of, I think, was 11 matches in an hour and 15 minutes. As the Nature Boy, Buddy Landau, takes on Tony Zayn. Nature Boy, Buddy Landau, has J.J. Dillon in his corner. Landau immediately starts off with punches and chops and kicks to the corner to Tony Zayn. He looks exactly like a cheap Ric Flair. He even does the knee drop, the famous Ric Flair knee drop, and the guy's lying on the mat and Flair drops the knee. He immediately hits an elbow drop and a figure four to win. That's why you're going to get 11 matches in an hour and a half. Basically, these were like the second match. I went maybe a minute and a half. I feel like I went longer than Mandy's, but not by much. So then they go over to do a promo, and you really can see how much of a cheap Ric Flair Buddy Landau looks like. He's got the hair slicked back like Rick. He's got the gear that says Nature Boy. But he's not fat, but he's a little chubby. Not chubby even, but a little, he's got like skinny fat, where he's not fat, but he doesn't look toned. He doesn't look physically impressive. He looks exactly like Ric Flair would be like if Ric Flair got sad and got depressed. Dillon says Landau challenges Terry Taylor for the national heavyweight title. They're done trying to impress the women. They're just gonna hurt people. Which brings us to our next match is the Rock and Roll Express. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson take on George Schauf and Mike Davis. Gibson trips immediately trying to do a leapfrog, and he, on the mat, grabs Davis's leg, takes him down, and they start working over Davis's leg, doing quick tags, hitting Davis's legs, kicking Davis's legs. Morton does the Jeff Hardy leg drop spot, like where he holds a leg open and how Jeff will bring his legs down on a guy's stomach. But Morton does it in a way where he hooks the back of his legs to the back of Davis's legs, so they come down like and their legs are intertwined, so like it spread Davis's legs. It looked fucking painful, like it would tear your groin. There's a four-way spot that breaks out. The Rock and Roll Express hit a double dropkick to Davis, who almost took a flip bump to win. Like he got dropkicked and somewhat did a backflip. Sorry, I burped there. And the Rock and Roll Express pick up the win. We go to an interview with Tony Schiavone interviewing Tully Blanchard with Baby Doll. He said Magnum had one shot, one more match against Tully. Both men got knocked out about 52 minutes into the match. He says it was a great match. It was a competitive match, but the title's still on his waist because that was Magnum's last shot. And even though Tully didn't win, Magnum didn't win, and Tully didn't have to win, Magnum had to win. We then cut to President Bob Geigel on the challenge Magnum made for the I Quit match for the U.S. title inside of the steel cage. Geigel said the I Quit rules were both rugged and liberal, so we couldn't let the match happen. Back at the podium, Tully said Bob is his man and Magnum can go back to the farm. Billy Jack Haynes versus Black Cat. Black Cat with forearms that have no effect on Billy. Billy's fucking huge, by the way. Billy Jack is some man, says David Crockett in a dreamy voice. Black Cat had a pretty cool mask by 1985 standards. He had a cat face, and even his mask had ears. Billy, he was working the snapmare this match. He hit about 4 snapmares and about 7 rest holds. A suplex and an elbow drop by Billy for the 2, which surprised me. As I rolled my nose, I was writing this sentence thinking that would be the finish, the suplex and the elbow drop. But it wasn't. I was expecting Black Cat to kick out. Black Cat passes out in a full Nelson. The rest holds of Billy Jack Haynes. A little too much this length into the match, and Black Cat unable to get out. Billy Jack Haynes is your winner. And about probably the longest match on the card just because Billy did a lot of rest holds. Tony Schiavone interviewing Dusty Rhodes' doctor. He asked the doctor if Dusty could come back. The doctor says it's reasonable that he go ahead and give it a try. He has an air cast reinforced fiberglass to allow function and provide the elbow and provide protection for his, I forgot what was broken. I think it was his shin. He got a custom boot from Austin Hall Boot Company, which is a reinforced boot, sort of like a steel-toe boot that people wear when on a construction job, or even I wore back at Sears. Which brings us to somehow the shortest match on this card. Yes, Manny Fernandez got outdone. He couldn't squash his jobber quicker than Magnum TA, who took on Keith Eric. After calling Billy Jack some kind of man, he called Magnum America's heartthrob. And you know what, David? Who could argue? Magnum hits a belly-to-belly and wins in seconds. Sorry, Keith, but you got in trouble by fighting Magnum. I don't know what you were thinking. Tony Schiavone with superstar Billy Graham. Billy Graham is interrupted by Paul Jones. You look like a fortune teller. I'm fixing to tell your fortune, said Paul. He said, if you want to do the arm wrestling match with Barbarian for $5,000, first, you gotta wrestle Abdullah the Butcher. Billy Graham rants about it, but then heads to the ring to wrestle Abdullah the Butcher. Which brings us to our most competitive match of the night. Well, and then maybe one a little more competitive. But the only match to actually have two noticeable stars in it. You've got Billy Graham versus Abdullah the Butcher. Abdullah jumps Billy on the outside as Billy's making his way to the ring. He headbutts Billy's arm over and over again, so he can't win that arm wrestling contest with the Barbarian. On the outside, Graham knocks Abdullah out of the ring. Well, now he knocks him outside the ring. Softly pushes him into the ring post, and then he goes over and chokes the Butcher with like a cable cord, which I was surprised about. I wasn't expecting that. Abdullah goes back in the ring. Abdullah takes over again. He's choking Billy on the ropes, and he distracts the ref so Paul Jones can hit him with a cane. Abdullah continues to work over Billy, but Billy fights back with the most babyface maneuver ever. Eye rakes. Billy moves out of the way of an elbow drop. He hits one of his own. He goes back to choking Abdullah the Butcher. A lot of choking in this match by both men. But as he's choking him, the Barbarian runs out with a big cast on his arm. Now I know why Billy wanted that match so bad for $5,000. And they beat up Billy. The Barbarian hits 2 diving headbutts before help runs out and they clear the ring. Barbarian, Abdullah, and Paul Jones make their way to the back as the other wrestlers check on superstar Billy Graham. Back from commercial, they said that last match was given 20 minutes. It was given 20 minutes because could have been a full-length match, and then there would have been an arm wrestling contest. So they give us a standby match, which, I like that reasoning. That was nice of them. They didn't have to explain why this was a standby match, but it was nice, like it made sense. As Pistol Pez Wozley took on Benny Taylor. As the match is starting, they wished David Crockett and Tony Schiavone wish a happy 52nd wedding anniversary and a first-year wedding anniversary to 2 married couples. Pez works over the arm of poor Benny. Benny tries an arm wringer of his own, but Pez says not to that and goes right back to working the arm. Pez Wozley, he's a big guy. Like, he's not overly tall. He looked like about 6'2", but he's just a big built guy. And that would come in later in this match and impressed me. He hits a nice gut wrench to Benny, completely throwing him in a big back body drop. Pez dances around the ring as Benny trying to get back up. He hits a drop salt, basically a drop salt. He drop kicks Benny, and he's sort of, not a full backflip, but like how Vader would do a moonsault, sort of rotating like to the left. He sort of rotates to the left and basically lands on his stomach after doing that. And especially for a man of Pez Wozley's size, and especially for the year of 1985, I was not expecting to see basically a drop salt, so that was really impressive. Benny, the only way Benny could ever get advantage in this match was by pulling the hair. Pistol, that's all he could do. It's not like his entire offense could be pulling the hair, so Pistol takes back over quickly, puts him in a Boston Crab. He gets out of it eventually by grabbing the ropes. Shortly after, Pez hits the flying headbutt to win. I thought he stole a flying burrito, but they showed a replay and he actually did just hit the flying headbutt. It was an impressive display by Pez. He did more than I was expecting for his man his size, and I wouldn't mind seeing Pez more in these weekly reviews. Jim Crockett announced I skipped this segment. Tony Schiavone was J.J. Dillon and Black Bart. J.J. is back. He said he's mad about not being a PWI Manager of the Year. It's probably because he was taking it easy. He was being too nice, like Buddy Landau, but that's over. He said he's got Black Bart. He's got Buddy Landau. And most importantly, he's got Thunderfoot to take out Billy Jack Haynes. Black Bart, like a complete fucking lunatic, yelled at Ronnie Bass about a bull rope match that they're having at Starrcade. He said Bass ain't got a chance. That's basically the only quote I got, because he was just shouting like a madman as he hit himself in the head with a cowbell. So I understood nothing of it, but he was hitting himself in the head with a cowbell, and he sounded like a lunatic, so I enjoyed it. Jim Crockett announced for next week, I am excited as Billy Jack Haynes takes on Thunderfoot. Tony and David give us a rundown of Starrcade. For the tag titles, the Russians, Ivan Koloff and Crusher Khrushchev, probably. I think that's who it is. They got, and maybe Nikita Koloff. I'm not sure which two of the three are actually the tag champs at the time, because the Russians, they're the tag team champions, but they're also the 6-man tag team champions. So I'm not sure which two just hold the tag team titles. But whichever two of the Russians take on the Rock and Roll Express inside of a steel cage. For the national tag titles, the Andersons aren't only defending against Billy Jack Haynes and Wahoo McDaniel. Ron Bass versus Black Bart in a bull rope match. If Bass wins, he gets 5-minute bull rope match with J.J. Dillon. And maybe the most on the line. It's probably going to be a world title match on the show. As we'll find out, there will be a U.S. title match on the show. There's a tag titles on the show. There's a national tag titles on the show. But even more important than all of that, for Manny Fernandez's sombrero. Manny Fernandez versus Abdullah the Butcher in a Mexican death match, not a Texas death match, but because Manny's there and he's fighting for his sombrero, it's a Mexican death match. We've got footage from an earlier show of Baby Doll giving Magnum her card. Magnum says it's about time you knew what it was like to be with a real man. America's heartthrob, after all. David Crockett was there. And he kisses her as David Crockett's in the background shouting, "She likes it! She likes it!" over the microphone. Baby Doll apparently doesn't like it because she got up and she slapped Magnum. Magnum, being a respectable man that he is after forcing himself upon this woman and her rejecting him, ripped her shirt. She tried to storm off, and Tully Blanchard rightfully jumped Magnum TA for making out with his woman and ripping her shirt after she slapped him. Tully Blanchard versus Danny Brown. Oh, wait, my bad. I missed something again. I haven't done one of these reviews in a while, so I'm losing my place in my notes. Jim Crockett, not David, Jim, the promoter, he said he is making Tully versus Magnum in an I Quit match inside of a steel cage at Starrcade for the U.S. title. Which brought us to the most competitive match on the card, Tully Blanchard versus some guy named Danny Brown, and Tully is pissed about this. He is furious. He slams his title on the podium where David Crockett and Tony Schiavone stand. He charges Danny, and he starts to fight. But what's great about Tully is even though he was pissed off and he was by far the bigger star, he was still the heel in the 80s, and Danny Brown started to beat his ass. Danny unloads on Tully. He's punching him. He's punching him. And he's punching him. He doesn't have a lot of offense. Tully has to fight back by raking his eyes. He throws Danny into the ropes and hits a move, but we miss it because the camera decided to shoot the back of Baby Doll's head. So you just see Tully standing, the guy falling, and Baby Doll's head. Tully begins to work him over, and Danny makes a comeback with a headbutt to the gut. Now he's throwing forearms. Now he's throwing elbows. He's running out of moves, so he goes back to punches. He's doing all the basic strikes he's got. Tully, being the evil man that he is, uses Danny's trunks to pull him headfirst into the turnbuckle. Tully hits, eventually Danny fights back again though. He goes off the middle rope for a horrible splash. Sorry, Danny, you gotta stick to your punches. Tully was able to counter it, and then he hit the slingshot suplex to beat Danny Brown in an actually pretty fun competitive match because of how intense it was. Tully charging him and Danny's multiple punches. Now the best thing on the show. The Andersons have a second promo. Ole said Jim Crockett is a big cheat, a no good human being. He said Tully only had a commitment for one more match against Magnum TA, and now he has to have a second one. He fulfilled his commitment. It's not Tully's fault that Magnum couldn't get back up, but now Magnum's just given a second match, and that's bullshit. He didn't say bullshit, but basically is. Arn then said Dusty gets to wear a steel-toed boot. If Arn goes out and breaks his arm, or hurts his arm, can Ole tape a ballpoint hammer to it, and can Arn wrestle with that? And you know what's great about it? Outside their promos, which I could never match because they're two great promos, and you should watch the show just to watch this Anderson promo or look it up. They have a good fucking point. Yeah, the fans were booing them because at the end of the day they were complaining, but they have a good point. Why the fuck should Magnum get a second shot? Why does Dusty get to have a steel-toed boot? None of this shit is fair to the heels. Even if not so much a case of Magnum, but in case of Dusty, the heels brought upon themselves by breaking the heel's leg, or the Dusty's leg. It's still not fair to the heels at this moment, and that's when they get upset. Arn is screaming as the camera goes to commercial. Sadly, that was the best thing on... Actually, I may take that back, because that main event. But up next, we got Nikea Koloff versus Mack Jaggers. As I said earlier, the Russians are the 6-man tag team champions and the tag team champions. Nikita no-sells the punches by Mack, and he drops him onto the top rope, guillotine style. Hits the Russian sickle, which is just a clothesline to win. Squashes Mack Jeffers. Nothing really else to say about that. The Russians go to the podium. Nikita said he doesn't like Ric Flair as world champion because he gets help from American ref. Crusher Khrushchev said, Road Warriors talk a big game, but where are they? They're gone. What the fuck? Didn't say that part. Ivan said, they're going to prove 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, they can take anyone. Said the cage match is very dangerous, but it won't be dangerous for them. Starrcade will be the end for the Rock and Roll Express. As Ivan's talking, Nikita starts flexing, and he's fucking jacked. If he was a face, David Crockett would be calling him a sexy dream man. Crusher also tries to flex, but he's not as jacked. He's not small, and he's not fat, but he's like kind of flabby. Flabby was the word I was looking for Buddy. And he's not as impressive as Nikita. But he has a chance to be impressive as Crusher Khrushchev and Ivan Koloff, I guess no one's in the cage, huh? Taking on Ricky Reeves and Jerry Carmen. Ivan with a body slam and a leg drop to Ricky. Crusher almost drops Jerry, though it does a dangerous backbreaker, and after he just flex showing how strong you are, you really should almost be dropping a small man. Crusher told Jerry, kicked him right with his toes. He Irish whipped Jerry in the ropes, and Jerry did that thing like where they duck down somehow as they're running the ropes, and their heads get caught under the top rope, so they whiplash themselves. Jerry's just not having a good day. Ivan chokes Jerry as the ref's distracted. Jerry's bleeding from the mouth. I don't know if it's from when he whiplashed himself on the ropes or if it's something that Crusher did, but not a good day. And then it got even worse for Jay as he took an ugly clothesline from Crusher Khrushchev. Like, when I say ugly for Ivan or Nikita's, it's because it just looked nasty, but it was probably safe. Crusher's looked ugly because it looked like he just hit him on the side of the head. And poor whiplash, told, unsafely dropped, bleeding from the mouth, Jerry now probably has a sore neck. Even more sore from the rope hit. Which brings us to our main event match. Jimmy Valiant, the Boogie Woogie Man, versus Jimmy Black. Before the bell rings, Jimmy Valiant's music is still playing, but he gets in that ring, and he doesn't run, he doesn't walk. I want to call it skipping. He maybe skipping. He sort of like high steps over to Jimmy Black, and he Irish whips him and does a big back body drop. Jimmy keeps on dancing. Being the good guy that he is, he hits a thumb to the throat and pulls his hair down. And pulls his hair to pull Jimmy Black to the mat. He has a nerve hold on Jimmy Black when a woman gets in the ring, the same woman from the opening clip. And as Jimmy Valiant has Jimmy Black in a nerve hold, the woman comes from behind Jimmy Valiant and kisses him. He responds by laying over the hold and shimmying in place. Like his head at first doesn't move, but his body is just moving back and forth, but still in one place. Eventually, his head catches up to his body, and he quickly looks back and forth between the fans and between the lady that just fucked him. She goes to leave the ring, and he follows after her. That's when Jimmy Black takes advantage and knocks Jimmy Valiant into the ropes. He's choking Jimmy Valiant in the ropes. Somehow the ref doesn't see what's about to happen. The woman punches Jimmy Black. Valiant pins Black off of her punch. Apparently she walked away as he was pinning her, and he screams for somebody to stop her. As he's celebrating, he doesn't even stop. He gets up and he goes to the edge of the ring where she just was. She's walking away, and he says to the fans, "Somebody stop her!" And then he goes to chase after her. Jimmy fucking Valiant's a fucking wild man, and I love him. He's fat. I said some people are flabby. He's fat. He's got a 9-foot beard. He looks like an old Briscoe, if that helps you imagine what he looks like. But he's so fucking awesome. At the podium, Jim Cornette comes to talk to Tony Schiavone. He called Jimmy Valiant's woman an ugly street lady. Valiant ran off years ago, but he was come back for child support. He says Bobby Eaton's mouth ain't been working right after she punched him. He's not even able to talk to Cornette. Valiant ran up, and Cornette screamed and ran away. Valiant, like a maniac, asked, "Where that old lady at, brother?" She's the toughest broad I've ever seen in my life. He asked people for help finding her. He said, "You can send a letter to him. You can send a letter to Santa. You can send a letter to the FBI. If anybody can help him find his tutti frutti little fruity," said Jimmy Valiant. He looked around saying he was in love, and then he kissed Tony Schiavone as the show ended. And I love Jimmy Valiant. The matches on this show, with the exception of Tully Blanchard being awesome, they were below average. They were squash matches. But the Tully Blanchard match, the Anderson's second promo, and Jimmy Valiant in general made this overall a pretty fun show. Which brings us to not a fun show. ECW Hardcore Television, April 6, 1993, the very first episode. Jay Scully and Stevie Wonderful introduce us to the show. They're in a tiny high school, maybe even middle school, maybe an elementary school. This kid's finger painting as this shit's going on. Gymnasium, where it looks like there's about maybe 150 people. Todd Gordon joins them, and he has a belt. It's the World Television title, and there's a tournament starting tonight. Stevie Wonderful has handcuffs on his belt buckle. They introduced another man to the commentary table, and he's known as the Living Legend. And I was like, was Larry Zbyszko ever in ECW? But Eddie Gilbert walked out, and he thought it was him. But it was Terry Funk. Eddie said, it's not him, it's Terry. He called Terry an old man in 1993. If only he fucking knew how long Terry would go. Terry challenged him to a fight, calling himself an old man in 1993. He was 49, which is old. I did the math. He was 49, and that is old. But for Terry Funk, that ain't shit. Eddie walked away. Funk called them hardcore fans, and they got the show on the road. How did we get the show on the road? With the ECW Tag Team Champions, the Super Destroyers. Who were the Super Destroyers? I'm not sure. They're just two kind of big-looking guys, and let's see, as I put it, two big men with black pants, black tank top, and completely black masks that show no features of their faces. Never learned their names. I'm guessing they're Super Destroyer 1 and 2. I have no idea which one's 1 or which one's 2. They had a manager, and then I catch his name. And they took on the Hell Riders. The Hell Riders are HD and EZ. I got their names. Which one is HD and which one's EZ? I don't know. In ring, they're introducing the tag champs. I already wrote that. Super Destroyers, they do a little dance before the match. It's not even a dance. It's like when you see DX like doing rock, paper, scissors to see who starts a match. But instead of doing rock, paper, scissors or patty cake, they're doing like a little weird hand gesture where like they're sort of putting their hands in between each other's hands. They're jumped by the Hell Riders. I thought the Super Destroyers were the heels, but I don't know. Don't even know who's who in this match. There's an ugly face buster to one of the Hell Riders by both the Super Destroyers. They barely got him off the mat. A double elbow by a Super Destroyer. One Super Destroyer accidentally distracts the ref as the other Super Destroyer is making a pin because he just won't get the fuck out of the ring. The other Hell Rider gets in and is immediately beat up and suplexed. There's a powerbomb by one of the Super Destroyers, immediately followed by a running senton by the other Super Destroyers to get the win. After the match, the Super Destroyers are like they're crawling around on their hands and knees like Randy Orton. Like that pose that Orton does where like he's technically on his knees, but he has his like legs dragging behind him and he's like walking on his hands. That's what both Super Destroyers are doing. Funk, oh, okay, I didn't know the manager names. Funk interviews their manager, Hunter A. Robinson, the third. Funk called him Hunter A. Robinson, the turd. And that's where that segment ends. That was fucking terrible. There was no short match on that Jim Crockett promotion show that was worse than this. Even Crusher Khrushchev could have done better, and he was the worst thing. Even out of all those jobbers, he fucked up the most. He would have wrestled circles around the Super Destroyers and the Hell Riders. There's a Sandman video package. It shows him, and this is not the Sandman that you know. This is not the Sandman in drinking beer, coming on the crowd, hitting himself with the beer can as the crowd's going crazy. No. He's here in a neon wetsuit, carrying a surfboard. He's got neon green armbands and a neckband. He has two shaded sunglasses. And the video is set to a very happy melody. They do a pretty good job of making Sandman look like a good wrestler, only showing like one move from like 6 different matches. They have a James Bond circle around Sandman at one point. There's a spot where like it shows him standing on the ropes, then it cuts to a move. Then it goes back to that still image of him on the ropes. Then it cuts to a move. Then it goes back to that still image of him standing on the ropes, and it does it like 4 times. That was if you know the Sandman for any of his later 90s run, just watch this early 90s run, and you will not be expecting what you see from the Sandman. We go to Tommy Cairo. Okay, let me stop there. So the next match is a TV title tournament. Terry Funk is standing at ringside, and he's wishing luck to one of the men in the match, a guy named Tommy Cairo. He's a pretty in-shape guy. Apparently he's undefeated in the ECW arena, but fuck it, Tommy. Tommy's not what is important in this video. So, Tommy Cairo's opponent is a big fat man. He is wearing an all black top. Over that black top, he has a red circle in the middle of his chest that like it has an X, red X lines going through it all around him, and another one going like right below his pecs, I guess, above his belly around his entire waist. He's got not shoulder pads, but he's got like some neon shoulder tassels. He has no pants on. He's wearing like booty shorts, but they're covered, thankfully, by more tassels. There's like a bright red color. I meant to say bright red, not neon. I was thinking of the Sandman. He has his face painted to match his color, his attire. His manager is wearing a very bright red jacket, and then what apparently, according to the announcer during the match, is a turban. It looked like a fucking helmet from Spaceballs, but it was like gray and had a dot in between them. I couldn't take my eyes off this combo. The manager, his name is Cosmic Commander. And when you looked at him, I thought, alright, that's a Cosmic Commander if I've ever seen one. So you may be asking yourself, if the manager is Cosmic Commander, if this man, if his wrestler is this man dressed like a fucking maniac, Wild Man, I gave that part away, what would his name be? Well, Wild Man was there, but Wild Man Salvatore Bellomi from Italy. This Cosmic Commander found this Neanderthal Wild Man from Italy. The fact, I already described all that. Wild Man does a horribly soft lockup. Back when I trained for a little bit, they said the lockup's the most important part of the match. And you always want to have a tight, intense lockup. Not Salvatore. He did it as lightly as humanly possible. Tommy's arm drags and outpowers the Wild Man. Wild Man, again, does a second horrible lockup. They just stand back up and keep locking up. Wild Man also has like long hair, but starting to thin on the top middle part of his head. Cryo with a running forearm. They just stand up and lock up again. They really love locks up, despite the fact that the Wild Man from Italy with a Space Commander man can't do a lockup. At one point, Wild Man is just lying on Tommy. Tommy with a flying body press for 2. Cosmic Commander distracts the referee, and Johnny Hotbody tried to attack Tommy, but he accidentally hit Wild Man. Wild Man fell to the outside and didn't get back in. Kyle won by countout. You gotta keep Wild Man looking strong. This horrible wrestler with his outlandish look. You gotta keep him looking strong. Kyle moves on. What a way to start this fucking tournament. A bad match. I may have insulted the Super Destroyers and the Hell Raiders, or Riders. You know what? I actually don't know if Wild Man's worse than him, because I actually want to see more of Wild Man. I hope he's on the show next week. Johnny Hotbody tries to hit Cryo from behind. He misses an elbow, and Hotbody leaves the ring. He missed the elbow, and they both got up and looked at each other, just standing in the ring, and then eventually Cryo left the ring. We've got a special challenge match as Tony Hitman Stenson takes on Rockin' Rebel. Tony's one half and the number one contender for the Tag Team Championships. Rockin' Rebel's number one contender for the World title. Tony is a fat guy with a mullet and a plingback singlet with stripes running up the leg. That's how to describe what he looked like for you. Tony with a lazy arm drag and then a hit toss to Rebel way too close to the corner. Rebel gets his feet caught on the ropes, almost bounces. And then he kicks him in the butt. Rebel responds to his kick in the butt by backing the referee into the corner, bending over, displaying his ass to the referee, and continuously rubbing it, saying he kicked me in the butt. And he just kept getting closer with his ass to the referee. Who the fuck is Tony? Oh, Tony, he did the Baszler stomping arm spot to the elbow, but instead of his leg, he did a knee drop, and it led to nothing. Whoops, almost knocked over my laptop. Rebel was able to fight back, and he hit a sidewalk slam for 2. That's where I really started to notice the ring mat. It looks like cardboard styrofoam, and I don't know how that works. And Tony hits a top rope leg drop. If it sounds impressive, he didn't do a jumping leg drop. He just sort of fell from the top rope. There was no elevation in his leg drop. Rebel sweeps the leg. Rebel's getting his ass whooped. He's number one contender for the entire time. For the world title, he's been getting his ass whooped the entire match. He lazily sweeps the leg. He lazily puts his feet on the middle rope for the win. That was it. He liked one of his 4 offensive moves was that, and he won. It was a bad match. These are apparently the number 1 contenders for your world and tag titles, and boy, I can't wait for those matches. After Rebel said he's coming for Sandman, he doesn't see Sandman in the building. He's going to take his title and his career. Number 1 wrestler doesn't wear a belt. But soon he will be Woo. Which leads us to, thankfully, our main event. This is only a 40-minute show. And my God, it was a long 40 minutes. In the TV title tournament, Larry Winters takes on Jimmy Superfly Snuka, one of the Mount Rushmore of ECW. Jimmy Snuka said it's great that he's at this college. So apparently they're at a college. I don't believe it. I go to a college. Our gym's a lot bigger than this. And boy, a man who's been in some of the biggest stadiums, venues in the world, he's happy to be at this college. He said he signed a contract and he introduced Eddie Gilbert. Eddie Gilbert said he's not a manager, but he is making Hot Stuff International, and Snuka will be TV champion. Snuka takes the guy down, but you can't see what he's doing because I keep cutting to kids in the crowd, which really makes me believe this is an elementary school because these little-ass kids probably just got out of geometry class, and they're here watching Jimmy Snuka beat up some guy after watching Wild Man and the Super Destroyers. Snuka called his opponent, Funk called his opponent that guy. He didn't know his name. That's another point. I told you he was fighting Larry Winters. I had to wait about 5 minutes into the match to figure out who the fuck Jimmy's opponent was because they didn't tell me before the match. And if you're wondering, Larry Winters, yes, that Larry Winters, he is also teaming with Tony Stenson as the number 1 contender for the tag titles. Jimmy hits a back body drop on the guy and Jimmy falls over. Snuka chokes Larry on the rope. The ref is distracted, and Eddie Gilbert does the lightest slaps to Larry. I called the light slaps, and I forgot what the last thing I called light was, but I said it's an insult. Eddie Gilbert was meaning to do light slaps, so that's fine. Larry with punches and kicks, but he's cut off by an eye rake. Larry was able to fight back with a running crossbody for 2. Eddie Gilbert gets on the apron. It leads to nothing. He gets off. Eddie Gilbert a minute later gets back on the apron and Larry punches him. Larry runs the ropes. Eddie trips him. Superfly hits a rib breaker. I don't know. It's like a backbreaker. I've always seen it, but I never know what it's called. Like when you pick a guy up and instead of like hitting a world strongest slam or something, you just drop him ribs first onto your knee. And then a Superfly splash to win. Snuka throws Larry to the outside after. It was a bad match. I guess by default, it was the best match on the show, which is really not saying anything because I don't think there were many worse matches on the NWA show. There were quicker matches, but nothing looked as bad as a majority of this card. I know at the end of this, the silver lining, the golden tunnel, I can see it. I can just picture it as the Dudleys and RVD and Sabu and Sandman, a different version of Sandman, waiting for me with open arms and barbed wire. But I gotta get through this, and this just seems so Bush League. Which brings me to Terry Funk going, it was a great show, but there's room for improvement. Give us time, we'll get better. All things said by Terry Funk. As he's wrapping up the show, there's just some guy standing in the ring taking off his little entrance jacket, and I'm like, what the fuck's happening? Well, Wild Man's back, and he gets in the ring, and he attacks the guy. He hits a body slam for the win. It was called an unscheduled match by Terry Funk, but what was the guy doing in the ring if this wasn't scheduled? Was he just getting ready for the dark matches, I guess? Wild Man wins in your main event. I said you gotta keep him strong by taking a count-out loss. They didn't even want to just do that. He had to get his win back. He's a 1-1 now, baby. Wild Man for ECW World Champion. I'm calling for it. There's an ECW special announcement. They thank us for watching. And they said next week we got 2 more TV title tournament matches and the world champ Sandman's there. Holy shit. Honestly, that was terrible. Fuck. And that ECW show was horrible. The NWA show, it wasn't great, but it had some great stuff on it, like the Andersons promo. Well, that was really the only great thing. The Andersons promo and a fun Tully Blanchard match, and Jimmy Valiant being awesome. ECW had nothing awesome on it, except for Terry Funk saying that they'll get better. Well, that was it for the first review of the NWA, ECW. You can WCW, ECW. You can call this the Invasion review. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week with episode 2 of ECW and episode whatever of NWA.